And I think of everybody when I start thinking. I
Yeah, I
guess
guess you put your mind to it, yeah. But there was still a lot of people that I would see all the time, but I didn't really know.
It just seemed like there was
a core.
it's like the Earth, right? There's the solid core, and then there's the liquid outer core, and then there's the magma around it.
Right. So yeah, I think that was my experience, was that there was a lot of people I was very close to, and then a lot of people who I knew very, very casually.
I was always amazed though, with given that mix of really strong and distinct personalities, that it seemed to work easily. And a lot of people so far credited just Ed's character as being a good host.
Magnet.
Mm-hmm. I agree, and I think in a lot of ways I've been helped just by knowing him and him pushing me to do things that I wouldn't have necessarily thought to do on my own, or felt uncomfortable doing, or.
Well, that actually anticipates my next question, which is how your involvement with 800 affected your practice or influenced your practice at the time and since.
Well, I think as time went on, and as regular events at 800 East started declining, yes, and the focus was on the bigger shows, that certainly getting involved in the High Museum, or later, I guess in '97, Ed was asked me to help him with the Arts Festival when they moved downtown. So I was sort of help coordinate a lot of the. I don't know if that was considered Art in Odd Places or not, but it was.
Not by that name, but I think.
Yeah, it was outdoor public art, and so I was helping organize that, and it was really valuable ultimately, because it was like, do you want to help me? Sure. Okay, well, this is what we got to do, and there were new things to me, and I was not necessarily comfortable doing them, but I had to do them. So it really gave me a good education in being an organizer, and how to be effective, organizer and a successful one. Not that I do a whole lot of that, but I mean, even the other night when trying to organize.
I wasn't sure what to expect. So, yeah, there's a party, a couple of bands are gonna play, but it seemed well structured and not. It certainly didn't diminish either part of it. But if you just had a party and bands and no organization, people wouldn't have listened to the bands as carefully, and so it was a nice. I could see elements of that.
So I think it's just that sort of thing, and my work at iDrome.
You work at iDrome.
I was the treasurer there for 5 or 6 years, I think. 5 years.
I don't think 800 had a treasurer.
It's unlikely.
It was more organized. I mean, iDrome was a different kind of thing than.
Well, it was more official. It was a nonprofit, or is a nonprofit.
It was more. Yeah, it was more plugged into the.
Yeah.
The.
Well, to some extent, I guess it was. It was not. It was funded to some extent, or iDrome was.
Like it's
more regulated.
City.
There was city stuff. There was state stuff. There was private benefactors, let's say, who gave. We sort of counted on to a yearly donation that would really help us. Yeah, and then there was fundraisers, but in any case, that sort of helped me, and of course iDrome did too, to a larger extent. Sort of helped frame just my outlook on the whole performance. Not industry, that's not the right word, but just making things happen and doing it just not haphazardly.
Yeah. What about you, Robert? What lessons did you take away?
Lessons.
Whatever.
I don't know. I think it helped gild. I was confused. My persona, just personally confused about myself. I think 800 East, what we were doing there, helped gild the kind of, I've kind of maintained that kind of definition of who I am since then. I think it just sort of gilded some of the unknowns, or it's not the right way to put it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. You're just saying it helped shape, you know.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it's
Shape
not that.
yourself.
It's helped shape me. It's kind of
Helps-
cheesy.
It is. I mean, it's a
But
little formative, I guess, but it's like it just helped galvanize your sense of.
yeah, there was a lot of confusion that I was going through all my whole life, and then having that as an outlet, and then the aftermath of the traumas that happened that helped me can my art for a while.
Would you
I've
say-
maintained that character since then. I think I know who I am now, and
Would you say it helped you stop doubting yourself?
no, it's not that. It's not doubting myself. There was just more identity confusions and what am I supposed to be doing?
Uh-huh.
And I'm supposed to be doing music and art and working with people in those two areas.
And you've done that since.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, yeah.
Do you know anything about how 800 sort of came to an end?
Well, I remember that in '97, I guess, the Arts Festival happened, and then I remember Ed moved to New York. So
That's all
kinda
I was
ended.
gonna say. is
But I
that
don't really
mean-
know what you know, in terms of venue. I don't. I think it was just sort of understood. I don't know how the whole lease thing worked over there, or
Yeah.
if where Wayne was at that time. If Wayne was still around, I guess.
No, Wayne was in New Orleans.
Moved to
back
New
then.
Orleans at that time. Okay, so there was. I don't know if it was left to anyone to continue.
Well, there was a lot of talk of there was a lot of struggle about trying to figure out how to acquire the building, because people didn't really want to let the venue go, because that whole property was very low price
Mm-hmm.
back then.
Right. Yeah. Was
And
there
it-
even an opportunity to buy it?
Yeah, there was.
Was
There was, and it was just too much for everybody
Yeah.
involved. It was still too much, even though it was pennies.
Mm-hmm.
Huge amount of property, and then
You'd be laughing now, wouldn't you?
oh, I know, and then
Yeah.
the whole development thing in that area kind of bought it up, and
I mean, it still exists as a building, right? Or buildings, isn't it?
Yeah, it looks like it kind of looks like a big gray concrete wave hit the side of the the one building and flopped over the top. Is what it looks like to me now.
Uh-huh.
It's a much bigger space, but it's built sort of on top of the old office building,
Uh-huh.
and the warehouse is torn down. It looks like.
Oh, is it?
oh, it is.
I think so.
I thought it still had the boxers on the back with ivy growing over it, but maybe I don't know.
I haven't really looked over there in a while.
I probably blotted out
Yeah, I
just
don't remember going on
unconsciously.
Fruit Parkway much,
Mhm.
but yeah, I don't know. I think it was just. I think I'm trying to think back to that. I remember saying goodbye to Ed, and I'm assuming that there was some sort of a slow dissolve of everything.
Time to move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But people wanted to keep it going, and just didn't know.
Yeah,
Well-
I don't remember. I don't really remember. I think I would imagine that people would.
Well,
probably
see
myself included, would continue, but I think whether Ed had, was 800 East, and was to some extent, but and that, yeah.
There was there was some political squashing going on. Not at that level, but at a more of a city level of the whole arts thing, and that Olympics came through and was gentrifying everything, and there was a lot of just people just kind of started fading out of it for some reason.
You mean like an intentional squashing of?
Well, through zoning and getting seedy elements out of neighborhoods.
Yeah, I'm not curious how the neighborhood felt about it.
The
It made no
developers
sense.
that came through.
No, I mean just even prior, like during the heyday or whatever, early '90s.
They didn't call the cops very much, as I recall.
Well, there wasn't. There was a lot of
Yeah, but anytime you get people drinking and
parking
in
all
front
up
of
and
your
down
house,
the
yeah.
street.
Yeah.
I think the neighbors back then kind of enjoyed it. The neighbors that it was different back then.
Mm.
And after the Olympics came through, then they just really started developing that area. And now it's yuppie or whatever you want to call it.
Unrecognizable now, yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Do you think 800 left a legacy of sorts in the city or in the?
Yeah, I think certainly to some extent, but not. It's interesting if I bring it up to people now. It's like, do you remember 800 East? Well, kind of. And so some people are either sort of fuzzy, kind of remember, or nope, never heard of it. So,
Oh, and then there's the converse of that, which is, oh my God, yeah, 800 East. So.
right, of course, but that's to me, to people who
Were
weren't
involved.
directly.
Yeah.
I don't find that very often.
Right.
You
And
know.
then of course the younger generation wouldn't know at all.
Mm.
Exactly,
It's their-
right. So that's what
Yeah.
makes a project like this pretty attractive. I think is just to be able to document that scene.
Yeah, well, when I was writing this grant application, it's obviously trying to make it sound really important that this, that they give me money to finish this thing. But I was wondering about what it, is it important? Certainly it's important to the people who are involved to have this documented, but I wonder if there's a larger
I think
legacy,
there
like if there's
is.
a model here that could be adapted in other situations, like especially in the absence of enough cultural funding. This seems like a model that you can just do it.
Yeah, but 20 years hence, maybe not.
Mhm.
Just in terms of finding a place like that and the environment and the price.
Oh, right, yeah.
So
I mean,
it's
what's
more
one
difficult.
thing that I think 800 East was kind of the last of a kind of venue where there weren't really very many rules. Their liability was like what, and that's what was like different with iDrum is you had rules and some liability to deal with.
Well, there was certainly liability, although as you're saying that, I'm thinking it wasn't that much different. I mean, there would be huge arguments about. Well, I'm not going to get into the specifics. So I want that.
We would save that for the iDrum document.
Yeah, exactly. But I think so. In a sense, I mean, to me, they're the same. iDrum and 800 East is the same to some extent,
Mhm.
just in terms of the ethic, if not the mission. But because it was in a lot of ways an anything goes kind of place, iDrum was. But just a different cast of characters. And that's what I mean about things sort of morphing and things coming and going away. And
To me, that's what
always-
iDrum was like an attempt to continue where 800 East left
Yeah, I
off.
don't think it was a direct attempt, but I think it
For the
certainly-
city,
Yeah.
or for the group in the city.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think like every city's got one,
Mhm.
and some are more interesting than others. But that's, now I say when I'm visiting a new town or a new city, I think, where's iDrum here? Or it
Uh-huh.
would be, or where's 800 East in this place? And it's around somewhere.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's easier to find than others, but it's that kind of a place that I find interesting. So, for me, that's the legacy is that stamped. That's what I look for. It's important to me personally. And I don't know if other people feel that way or not, but I think, and it wasn't my first experience with a
Right.
multidisciplinary art space, but I think 800 East was my first, the first space that was run in such a way that was interesting. Not interesting, that's a horrible word. That was doing it right to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
right was just bringing together different personalities and keeping people engaged and having fun and being creative.
It was all that fun was, you know,
It was a
that was the
blast.
biggest word.
Yeah, it was a blast. So I think that
Yeah.
doing it right in that sense, there was really no rules, and kind of anything went, and you could do whatever you wanted. And
Yeah, but at the same time, there was a lot of respect there. Like, it was fun, but it also felt very safe. I mean, I felt fine bringing my 3-year-old girl,
Mm-hmm.
and eventually if I had to build something, I was comfortable knowing that everyone there was watching out for her.
Mm-hmm.
And in that neighborhood at the time, and the fire ants and the sharp objects.
Mm-hmm.
One level, it's not a safe environment for a 3-year-old girl to be wandering around.
But around those people.
Around those people, it was
Yeah.
very caring and
Sure.
supportive.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was my first experience with fire ants. Actually, was laying out in front of the building, and then
Oh man,
and,
laying in front of
just kind of in the grass like this,
Oh, yeah.
and then all of a sudden it's like, so, yeah, that was.
Yeah, they got Alex once. She still remembers that.
Well, I agree. It was that type of there was a mutual respect among people who were involved there.
Great. Is there anything you'd like to add? Given that this is just the first shot at it, and I will be setting up probably a telephone hotline. Where
Red
you can-
phone.
Yeah, you can call in. My buddy does this, who's also collects oral histories, where there's a number you can call and leave a story.
Oh, that's a great idea.
So there'll be a chance if you remember stuff or is there anything you want to add. And then I'm figuring out a place if you guys have any ideas, to share documents, scans, photographs, maybe even video.
Well, it's opened up the Facebook thing to some extent, but
Yeah, I'm leery of Facebook just because, like, when I do interviews, I like there to be a better degree of control and confidentiality. And if it's on Facebook, apparently Zuckerberg can use it for whatever he wants. And he probably wouldn't. There's so much material there, but
Somebody else could.
yeah, somebody else.
it does put it out there publicly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I like Facebook for communicating with people. Like he I think he sent out the initial let people know that I was coming on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But so I don't know. There must be something. Maybe Dropbox for now.
Yeah, or there's several services like that. Dropbox is probably, in my experience, the most workable in terms of different folders for different things and just organization.
And Skype too. I'll have to do some Skype interviews. I don't know much.
I just did my first Skype interview 2 days ago.
Oh, yeah?
For
Oh yeah.
did I tell you about it?
No.
For a reality show for the Science Channel.
Really?
Yeah, Fabricators.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was me and Jason and Radar and Scott and oh gosh, one other person. I can't remember who it is.
How'd it go?
It went great. It was fun. Yes, TV producer on the other end talking to us in the office back in there listening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it went good. We'll see. They pitched it yesterday.
Yeah, cool.
They called us. They approached us. So.
What are you fabricating?
I don't really know exactly what the show's about, but they're looking for a crew of people who get strange requests to pull something off, like get like a coffee table to hover 6 feet and fly across the room and land. I don't really know.
Huh.
I don't really know.
It sounds like what 800 did.
Yeah, to some extent, yeah.
Cool. Best job I ever had was working as a properties technician in a theater back home in Brunswick, because we would just get these things from the director, like, I need a thing that's 7 feet tall and yellow and it bounces and the eyes move.
That's exactly what these people are.
Oh, that's great.
That's what we're all set designers and set builders and artists.
Mhm.
So
And once we got one that said we need a 67 Chevy life size, but it has to fit in the back of a touring van.
exactly.
That's cool.
Exactly.
It's a lot of
So
fun.
that sounds fun. So, do you know what they're going to ask you to build?
No, they asked us some specifics like that, or he did, and we really couldn't tell him exactly what it was we could do. And he's like, well, we'll just have to determine that if the show comes about, assign some things for you to do. So I don't know, a little nervous about it.
Oh, it'll be fun.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
It'll be fun, yeah. So that was my first
And
Skype interview.
I don't think I know the other guys you mentioned, but if the spirit is the same,
Yeah, right.
like imagine at the time you could have done a reality show, 800 East,
Or
pulling things
imagine.
together. It'd be
Yeah.
hilarious.
Would be hilarious.
Maybe it was a reality show.
I guess it was. Just wasn't being filmed.
It
It's true,
really
though. That
was,
would
yeah.
probably be really quite entertaining, actually, to just pick, whatever, one performance.
One evolution of
Yeah.
getting one together and pulling it off.
Semi-fictional.
I think one of the most hysterical ones, another one, was the style show When It Rained Cats and Dogs. You remember that? And it was the night Apple sang with us and Kevin played, and it flooded so bad that water came in the building.
Vaguely.
And we were over in that corner where water came in, and everyone was getting their electronics off the floor. Yeah, it was about this deep.
Jesus.
Inside 800, came in about 20 feet.
Given that, and Anthony told me that there was no ground on the mixing board, and people would get shocked from the microphones on a good day.
Yeah, it was very nerve-wracking because it was a huge turnout. Even though it was pouring down rain, we were all nervous because it was striking lightning too, and everyone that's conscious of what's going on was like, people were out there dancing in the barefoot with the lightning striking. Oh God.
And no liability.
Yeah.
No liabilities. Yeah.
Wow.
But I don't know, if I had to sum up, I'd have to say, I'm thankful that it existed, and I'm thankful that I got to meet a lot of really cool people
Mm-hmm.
who are super creative, and that, it really, as little as I remember, from back then, it was a big part of my life, through the early mid-90s.
Yeah.
It was on my mind a lot.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it was my main thing for a few years. for me it was 93.
It's unfortunate that at the time there wasn't or maybe it isn't. I don't know.
The documentation.
The documentation part of it. I mean, I there's parts of my life, or certainly my performing life, that are very well documented, and other parts that, for one reason or another, there's no documentation. And it's unfortunate. Like, even I think about the other night, I wanted to record all that music, and
This is my first question.
I should have.
you know.
I should have brought my
Well,
equipment in the car.
So, there's that sort of thing. But then at the same time, it's like, well, I have a memory of standing in the backyard and seeing that tree lit up and the fire going, and the moon and the music, and it's
That's
like,
great.
it's
It's
a
really
great
nice.
memory.
And then I also wonder, because everything is documented.
No.
Someone told me the story. They were in a restaurant and they saw a young couple on a date, and her food came, and she took a picture of her food and she showed the guy. Or there's that cartoon, I think it's from the New Yorker, of a guy sitting watching television, and outside his window the sun is coming up on his television. The sun is coming up. and he's looking at the television.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, I think you also lose something, because if you're documenting,
totally.
you're not in it.
Right. That's what's kind of nice about having that thing just set up and going. But it didn't even that, you may be conscious of it, or even having a camera set up here and recording
Yeah.
devices it's like, you have to think to relax rather than say, this is being recorded, I have to watch what I say, or I have to sound, I have to come across a certain way. So that sort of colors what's
It's
happening.
But I mean, if it happened today, I think I probably would recommend just set up. It's so easy now. Just set up a surveillance camera up above front of the
Or
stage.
2 or 3.
Right.
Yeah, and just
It wasn't
let
easy
people
back
know
then.
they're being filmed.
Yeah,
They
right.
those people wouldn't make any difference.
Back then it was a pain in the butt. Everything that was kind of the end of when documentation was a pain in the butt. It was about 93, 94. And then everything started going digital. But taking pictures was a pain in the butt. Video was a pain in the butt.
But thank God that they exist. I mean, I haven't even yet gone through my photos of.
But you can scan them too, right?
Yeah.
So if you've come across interesting stuff,
Yeah.
let me figure out a site and you can just
Mm-hmm.
upload them. Some people did. Randy was very organized. I guess as a fabricator you have to be. But he had lots of documentation. He had T-shirts from all the shows.
Oh, great.
Who knew?
Wow.
Yeah, I'm glad some people did it.
Yeah,
I'm so
yeah.
glad.
You know, I'm definitely not quite that organized.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I have at this Oral History Center is it acts as an archive too. Yeah. Drum.
I think that was a C5A. That was a military C5A passing over. I just didn't want it to be a bomb.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So anyway, it acts as an archive, a physical archive, or a virtual archive.
It's a virtual archive for now. Like when people do projects, I offer to keep a digital. If they have the release forms, I'll keep a digital copy, or I can keep it regardless. If they don't have the release forms, I just don't release it. But people know that it's safe, so I'm trying to keep things in other places.
Right.
And one of the reasons I started is because our school, all the students have to do senior thesis projects. And some of them choose to do interviews, so they have to go out and do all this work, collect all these interviews, transcribe them, write their project, and then throw it all away. I'm like,
Yeah.
did all this work, and so there should be a place just to save it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe some future student could just look at the same material again, and so I was trying to save material and convince them to do it properly and legally. And so it's starting a little bit, but the community stuff is good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I've got a friend who does interviews with the old-time residents of Beverly Farms.
That's cool. I mean, that's important. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no one ever listens to it. She
Right.
does stuff with it, but it's also there, at least.
I interviewed my folks back in 2005. Just a quick story. I was getting a passport, and that involved getting my birth certificate, which I had to send away for. And so I got the birth certificate, came home, opened it up, and just was looking at it. And my mother's maiden name appeared differently than the name I was familiar with. And it's like, what the fuck is this? You know, so I called her, and she said, and she always would talk about her childhood and about, you know, this thing she didn't want to talk about, her childhood. So that kind of clicked for me, and I called her, and we talked briefly about it, and I was going to be visiting them in, I guess, just a few months, and I thought, actually wanted to videotape them, but they felt uncomfortable with that, so
Yeah.
we just set a mini disc recorder off to the side, and so I got that whole story, and I probably, so both of their stories from birth up to a few years after they got married.
Wow.
And I'm really glad I got the story, because I never knew about her childhood.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think and they're in their 80s now, so they're not going to last forever. So, you know, I'm glad I have that.
I just saw an article in the Sunday Times about family narratives, and apparently children that have a good sense of their family story are much better adjusted. I mean, it's not a shocking finding, but they survive trauma better. Have less emotional problems, less learning disabilities. And so there's something about a coherent story that really is reassuring. And a lot of, I mean, actually, some colleagues do trauma counseling, and that's a lot of what they do. Is we deal with trauma by helping people create a story around it that helps you make sense of things. So you wonder that. So family secrets are bad for brain physiology even as well.
Well, yeah, it took me to, I was mid-40s, I guess, before I
Yeah, too
found
late
out
for
the
us.
secrets.
But
Yeah, right. But also, yeah, it's interesting thinking about it as a secret. And I'm not sure it functioned that way, but it just wasn't a secret necessarily, but it was not discussed. I imagine if I had started digging years earlier, I'm curious if we would have, gotten
Well,
into a
maybe
discussion
she
about
had
it.
to get to a certain point in her life too that she felt
Oh, that's possible. Yeah.
comfortable.
Mhm.
Well, thank you, gentlemen,
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
It was
for
fun.
being in touch.
That was fun. I just realized that this was behind us.
Yeah, that's why he said
Perfect.
it's a perfect spot to
It's
set
great.
the camera.
I should pan up. This will be our last shot here. So pan back. Not a very smooth pan. That's like a Doug Logan shot there. Except that I have to whip out my penis and wave it in front of
Oh,
me.
that's right.
Nice.
I started getting a little chilly in there, but I didn't want the heat to be lasting. It's a little noisy. But I like this.
I know mine. I was like, oh god, getting mine off of that.
Can I-
This is gonna be difficult. Not with it.
Can I plug this? I'm not still recording.